What's going on, everybody? Mitch from respectmyregion.com coming in with the morning joint here on Monday, filling in for the regular host of the show, Joey Bravo, as he's out traveling back to Los Angeles from the Shambhala Festival. This guy's back-to-back festivals. He's at Northern Nights last weekend, NorCal, and then Shambhala up there in, was it Eastern BC? I don't know. I haven't been there. But I believe it's eastern, somewhat north of Spokane, up there in British Columbia, across the border. So him and the team out there have been grabbing some content all weekend, hanging out, seeing a bunch of live music as it goes at Shambhala. I know, again, I've never been, but I know that's one of the content we've done on that festival has always performed super well, and people get excited. A lot of people travel from all over to drive and camp out in the wilderness of BC. You see me scratching my arm. I was camping as well this weekend. I got mosquito bites all over my body, so don't mind the scratching. I'm trying to refrain. Anyways, on this episode of the Morning Joint, we're going to go through five news topics in cannabis and 5 news topics in music. We are in the midst of the North American Weed Tour. We have a bunch of different shows. Morning Joint's obviously something we do outside of that. RMR podcast is something we do outside of that, but we've had a bunch of guests last week on the RMR podcast. We had Urban Aroma coming from New York. We had M1 from Dead Prez, Umi, John Monopoly. They were on RMR podcast talking about Urban Aroma, their journey in cannabis, what the East Coast has seen. We also had Oleo, concentrate company out of Colorado, on the podcast last week. And I'm trying to think of what other guests we had. I believe I did 4 episodes last week. Space in my brain a little bit. I'll have to take a look here in a moment. But on our other shows, we had the Grow and Tell podcast with Aaron, Canadian Cannabis podcast, Midwest Cannabis podcast, DTI, Digital Trapper Institute, episode 3 last week. I went over different ways to do paid ads on Facebook and Instagram for cannabis. So check that out. That was episode 3. Hire Women podcast was rocking out last week. And then we got another one we'll get into here actually in the thing. So let's move on through the news topics. So the number one news topic that we're dropping today on our website, respectmyregion.com, there is a in-depth feature and interview on 40 Tons brand with an interview with Anthony and L'Oreal, as well as Corvain Cooper. We're talking about, how 3 legacy cannabis operators have inserted themselves into this recreational market and keeping the spirit of the legacy market alive, and making sure not only that legacy has a seat at the table, a voice in the conversation, but is also doing their part to direct attention and funds to those serving time behind bars for cannabis crimes. I know there's other groups out there doing this. There's like the Last Prisoner Project, other ones, all great groups, but 40 Tons brand is really something that we stand behind at Respect My Region. They're good friends of ours. They're great people. They have a great mission. And, these guys are just pure legacy operators without high level connections, a big level budget, that are pushing their brand forward. It's social impact because they don't have a social equity license. They're out here doing what they got to do, making moves, spreading the message, and then taking the wealth and the awareness, the money and the awareness that they're getting, and putting it back to the communities that need it. Definitely check out 40 Tons brand in general. 40tonsbrand.co, I believe, is their website, but also on the website right now, if you go to the homepage, respectmyregion.com, we got a nice little feature on 40 Tons brand. It's an orange graphic with Corvain, Anthony, and L'Oreal on it, I believe. Really dope crew. Something you got to check out. Next in news, Weed for Warriors launches an ad campaign holding politicians accountable for cannabis industry struggles. So Weed for Warriors is one of the leading groups that looks to work within legislation and getting safe access for veterans to cannabis. Those struggling with PTSD, anxiety, depression, all the things that those who make a big commitment and sacrifice for this country and our freedoms go through. They're out here fighting for their access to cannabis over opioids. And they recently launched this new ad campaign, and they're putting billboards up that are actually calling out politicians that are voting against veterans and access to cannabis, and kind of making the navigations of medical cannabis difficult. And it's not surprising if you go into politics, and not to make it too political, but there's quite a bit of Democrats that are voting against this, that get get on stage and speak a big game about we got to be there for the people and do this and these social programs and what have. And then they block things like this, likely because they're funded by special interests. It's the same old story in politics, but Weed for Warriors is an incredible group, and they're actually putting money up to bring awareness to the people to hold these politicians accountable. Are they living up to what they're saying? Are they doing right by people? And are they doing right by veterans, which is obviously a group that a lot of society kind of forgets and casts aside after they make a sacrifice. And so it's great to see guys out there that are providing a voice for them. So shout out Weed for Warriors. Definitely check that out. They got some billboards going up. We have an article for that on the site. You can see it. It's Weed for Warriors launches ad campaign holding politicians accountable for cannabis industry struggles. We check that out. Next in the news is the Legacy Cannabis podcast. At the start of this, I was talking about some of the podcast shows that we've launched and been going regularly. The Legacy Cannabis podcast is hosted by none other than Adam Ill. In the world, I'm not a big fan of influencer, but he is a cannabis influencer and has been a host of traditional radio podcast, for many, many years. Adam Ill is a great dude, great to speak on the culture. So the Legacy Cannabis podcast is all about interviewing people in the legal market, the recreational market or medical market, who have roots and ties to the legacy market. I know there's a lot of different conversations of what's the legacy market. Some people consider the medical market legacy. Some people think it's black market, or some people try and gloss it over and say gray market, whatever. Me personally, I classify legacy market as anything pre-adult use. When adult use didn't exist, anybody in cannabis before adult use. So as soon as Colorado and Washington passed, there was and recreational cannabis came, there was no legacy operators unless you were moving outside of the system altogether. So for me, legacy cannabis operators is anyone moving outside of the system or pre-adult use. Some of those people may be medical, operating in the medical market. Some of them may not. They might just be truly legacy. Everyone might have a little bit of a different definition, but that's how I take it. But anyway, Adam Ill has been around cannabis for a long time. We love him as a host because he's also was one of the few people early on to put his face and name out there associated with cannabis before it was where it was at now. Even people like myself even was very much involved in cannabis for a long time, but was not comfortable putting my face or what I was doing in cannabis out there for very good reason. But I have a big special place in my heart for anyone that really blazed the path in talking about cannabis, whether it was on the radio, whether it was in podcasts, whether it was on social media, kind of before it became popular and common and the stigma was really broken. People like that, like Adam Ill, really helped pave the way to break the stigma for others such as myself to feel as comfortable talking about things in the past. This last week, Adam had on Mad Mark. Mad Mark runs Mad Mark Farms out here in Washington. Super solid guy. We at Respect My Region have worked with him a lot. He sponsored our events. We started in Washington. I still live up here, so I see him out and about at industry stuff all the time. Love the dude. Love his products. He's been around cannabis for a long time, and he's just one of those dudes. He's fully in the legal game, but it comes from the cowboy days, and very much his approach to his business is not bending at the will of regulation or bending at the will of the retailer or the system, but just simply doing what he's going to do and making people that want to work with him the way he wants to. His brand and his strategy and approach, if you watch the podcast or any of the previous interviews we've done with him, he is truly a great example of craft cannabis. So many people enter this industry and want to call themselves craft. He's one of those guys that has such a craft approach to his products, craft approach to his marketing, craft approach to his brand as general. And I think if you were to take away all dispensaries and only be D2C, like straight drive up and get your stuff from the farm, kind of that craft brewery model we've heard people talk about in a few places, I think his business would thrive and not miss a beat, where many people would struggle without that distribution point. And it's just a testament to what he's done in cannabis pre and post recreational cannabis legalization out here in Washington State. But check that out. Mad Mark, interviewed by Adam Ill. He has a lot of things to say about the LCB, the Liquor and Cannabis Board, in that podcast. And if you know Mark, he will always, if you want to talk about the LCB, talk some mess, he will gladly at any time start ripping on them. But it's not just, man, fuck them, this and that, for good reason. He calls out a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of the BS, a lot of the things that are just restricting this industry kind of from moving how the industry goes. A lot of these government bodies and regulatory oversights are not from this and do not understand this and are trying to put something they don't know in a box that's never been built before. Mark's one of those guys who just is willing to speak out and put his name on the line and put a target on his back from operators, to speak out against that, much like Elliot from Catalyst. I know a lot of people on LinkedIn see him talking, salute him. He's one of those people that is operating, crushing, and killing it, but also calling out the bullshit and the hypocrisy every day, and putting in the work, and not just for self gratification or doing it to yeah, I don't know, because he enjoys stirring the shit pot, but because it actually can have some value for the industry, not just themselves, but the industry as a whole, if their voice is amplified and reaches the right people. So, anyways, Legacy Cannabis podcast hosted by Adam Ill, Mad Mark was on there. They're talking about OGs from weed before it was legal. So Mad Mark's one of those guys out in Washington. Check that out. Another thing that we got, if you go on our YouTube, and the link should be in the description, Joey did a review of Cookie's Adios motherfucker strain. I believe the AMF strain is only available in California right now. When I interviewed Burner a couple weeks, and that interview's on the site as well, he said that was out of all of the strains Cookies has done in 2022, and there's a lot across all the different markets, Adios motherfucker was Burner's personal favorite out of the Cookies lineup, and said that it's being crossed into a ton of new genetics that we will see in multiple markets later in this year and beyond. So I have yet to try it, but Jay Ping interviewed the AMF strain that's on our YouTube, and again, the link is in the description. Next on Cannabis News, we put out our guide to cannabis concentrates. Obviously, there are a ton of different types of concentrates, the way they're made, the way that you consume them, the consistencies of them. So one of our authors, Hannah, went through and explained those. Hannah Gershowitz went through live resin, rosin, cured resin, sauce, batter/butter, sugar, shatter, wax, crumble, distillate, RSO, FSO, and hash, keef, THCA diamonds. So Hannah really dove in and looked at all the different types of concentrates. It's a common thing that we see with people talking about concentrates, as consumers are not always aware of what types of concentrates are used for this or the best temps. So we put together a very long, it's like 3,000, 4,000 words guide to all the different types of concentrates. So that's on the website. You guys can check that out. Moving on to music news for the morning joint. Brent Faiyaz put out a new album, Wasteland, and is featuring Tyler, the Creator, Alicia Keys, Drake, and more. I believe he's got production on here from like even the Neptunes and No ID. If you know No ID, that was one of Kanye West's early mentors and has done a lot of production for Jay-Z, Twista, ton of people out there. I grew up as a producer. No ID is not one of those guys you know as much as a Timbaland or Swiss Beats, but if you actually make beats, you know who No ID is and his impact on the game. So Brent Faiyaz, he's been putting out a lot of really dope R&B music over the years. It's real smoker friendly. If you look at the graphic that we have on there, he's smoking a big blunt. I'm a big fan of his music. I have yet to dive into this album just yet because there's been quite a bit of new music coming out. But I'm excited to get in there. I really like just bumping his stuff on long road trips, which is how I spend a lot of my time. Coming up next in music news is Northern Nights. We did a Northern Nights recap. So Jay Ping and some of the team was up there. And Joey said this is by far the best smaller tier music festival on the West Coast because of its legal cannabis consumption, music, workshops, meditations, and not to mention the facilities were kept clean every single day. And man, Joey goes to a lot of festivals. I know a lot of people on LinkedIn know him from the cannabis community and his moves around that. But for 11 years, I've known this man longer than that, but for the last 11 years, this man has traveled the country and gone to music festivals all over the country. I'm talking the upper echelon top tier to the small ones way out in the woods. This man has produced music festivals. So if this guy is hyping up how clean the bathrooms were, which is very difficult to do at music festivals, letting alone anything with camping, man, that means that, shout out the staff. They're really putting in the work for the people being there. And then obviously Northern Nights allows cannabis consumption there. They have cannabis sponsors, cannabis booths, and then they also have like an on-site dispensary, I believe. So that's just like, I don't know. It's one of those festivals that's super special. Cannabis is consumed alongside music. A lot of people look at Respect My Region and go, "Oh, music and cannabis." Yes, that's a lot of what we are. They go hand in hand in so many ways. Northern Nights is able to do this, through working with some of the recreational cannabis market in California. They're able to put on this festival that treats cannabis, it normalizes it. There is no stigma. So super dope. We got an interview with the quick interview with the co-founder Andrew, inside the article. So that's on the site. Northern Nights Music Festival recap, official from RMR. Check that out on the website. Appreciate Joey getting out there and out in the mix to report on it for us. Coming up in cannabis, or more, not cannabis, sorry, more music news is Westside Gunn. Puts out his new album, Peace, Fly God. I don't know how many Westside Gunn fans are out there. I'm a Westside Gunn fan. He's from the record label Griselda, which is also home to Conway the Machine, which I believe is Westside Gunn's brother or cousin. And I need to look that up. And then Benny the Butcher. I think Westside Gunn and Conway are brothers. They are brothers. And then Benny the Butcher is their cousin. That's the mix. So that's kind of the trifecta, the holy trinity of Griselda, if you will. They're from Buffalo, upstate New York. They were signed to Shady Records for a bit. They broke away from that. But fans, I'm in my mid 30s. Anyone that grew up my age and was a fan of that original hip hop, that boom bap, that real stuff. Some of y'all might not be as in tune and think that hip hop has lost its way from the 90s and the early 2000s. Griselda is right back, bringing fresh new music that sounds like it was from that era. Super dope beats, dark, grimy beats over pretty upper echelon bars and lyrics. I'm a big fan. Westside Gunn's got a super swaggy sound and flow. And these guys, the Griselda guy, not just Westside Gunn, but all the Griselda guys, these guys put out like 3 to 4 albums a year individually and group albums and collab albums. These guys stay working. So Peace Fly God just came out. It's 10 tracks. Definitely something worth checking out if you're a hip hop fan, especially kind of that traditional hip hop fan. Next in music news, we have it again. The link should be in the description, and then it's on our YouTube. Kid Cudi walks off stage at Rolling Loud. The crowd was throwing stuff on stage. I wasn't sure if they were just, sometimes crowds get rowdy and they just throw stuff. I don't know if they're throwing it at him or just throwing it on stage. But Kid Cudi gets a little wild and like closes his eyes and dances around. He's not trying to step on something, slip, tear an ACL while he's out there performing. That's how he makes his, puts bread on the table. So he was getting real upset, asked the crowd numerous times, stop throwing shit up here. And then he finally is like super heated and is like, if anyone throws any more shit out here, I'm about to walk off. And of course, someone in the crowd or multiple people in the crowd huck some shit up there. This man drops the mic and just walks straight off the stage in the middle of his set. It's pretty disrespectful from the fans. And especially if you're paying the type of money for Rolling Loud, you're not just paying an exuberant amount for the tickets to go. You're likely paying cost to travel and for hotel. You're spending a lot of money. And Kid Cudi was the headliner. He replaced Kanye was set to headline. He backed out. They filled it with Kid Cudi. He was the headliner for the first night. So it's crazy that some fans, forced this guy off stage when I'm sure a lot of people paid and were stoked to see him. So that's corny, but you can watch the video. It's on our YouTube. And there should be a link in the description here. Last but not least on the music news for this morning joint episode is Rolling Stones recently put out their top 200 hip hop list. I believe it's top 200. Let me double check my notes real quick. Yeah, Rolling Stones 200 greatest hip hop albums of all time. And it's updated, right? So they put these out and they update it as new music comes out. They put Cardi B's album Invasion of Privacy ranked at number 16 on the top albums of all time. And unsurprisingly, the internet was kind of lost their shit. People were really freaking out. How could you do this? Da 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 da. This is not that. It's not a top 20 album of all time. And so, it leads the question, anybody out there curious of your guys' thoughts. I'm not the biggest Cardi B fan in general. I mean, I'm a fan in terms of, I think she's talented. I think she's done some amazing stuff, but is she my favorite rapper in the world? Nah. Would I say she's the best rapper in the world? Nah. Would you ever, ever, ever pull up next to me at the light and catch Cardi B pumping out of my windows? Nah. It's just not going to happen. No disrespect. I just don't be listening to club music like that. And it's come from more of that female perspective, if you will. And that's just not what I'd be jiving to personally. But I still think it was a great album. It was a Grammy nominated when it came out, as I thought it should. It was truly an incredible album. But if we run through just the top 20 real quick, starting at 20, they put Future, DS, Dirty Sprite 2 out of 2015. 19, Lil Kim, Hardcore. Number 18, Mad Villain, Mad Villainary in 2004. I remember buying that album at Best Buy. Number 17, Kanye West, Yeezus. Number 16, Cardi B, Invasion of Privacy. 15, Eric B and Rakim, Paid in Full. 14, Ghostface, Killah Supreme Clientele. Such an amazing album. Number 13, Dr. Dre, 2001. I remember being in 6th grade hearing that for the first time. That is one of the best albums of all time for sure. Clips, Lord Willin', 2002. I remember buying that album when it came out. We're going through my childhood. I cannot believe that they put that below the Chronic 2001. Yeah, this is crazy. Number 11, Drake, Take Care. Number 10, Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. 9, Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory. Number 8, Wu-Tang Clan, Enter the Wu-Tang Clan. When I got my first car, that was the disc that I had in there and listened to forever on my first couple weeks driving. It was the only CD I had in my car. Missy Elliott at number 7, Miss E, So Addictive. Number 6, Kanye West, Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Number 5, Kendrick Lamar, To Pimp a Butterfly. 4, Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. 3, Jay-Z, The Blueprint, probably my favorite album of all time. Number 2, is The Blueprint. Number 2, Outkast, Stankonia. I remember buying that when it came out. And number 1, Notorious Big, Ready to Die, which is another one of my favorite albums. Front to back, the album smacks. But I cannot believe the Chronic 2001, they really put Drake, Take Care, and Clips, Lord Willin' before the Chronic 2001. That is just blasphemy. Blasphemy. So, Cardi B, it's hard. I don't know, man. They got UGK, Nas, a bunch of people above her. I don't think it's a top 16 album of all time. I see what they're doing. Obviously, it was a good album. It's Grammy nominated, solid. But, yeah, top 16, I don't agree. Caused the internet to stir. That's what anytime you put a list out, best, greatest, anything, we cut our teeth doing a lot of lists in the music realm before cannabis was popular. Anytime you put out a best list, the best is so subjective. It always causes a stir. For us hoop fans, none of us can ever agree. Is LeBron? Is it Kobe? Is it MJ? Who's the GOAT? That's going to forever be Twitter and barbershop and ESPN battle. No one's ever going to agree. So I don't think we can ever agree on the best hip-hop albums. But I think a lot of us could agree. I don't know if Cardi B's first album's making the top 20 of all time. And what the hell is up with the Chronic 2001 getting above Drake and Clips? Man, you guys are tripping. Rolling Stone, what the hell are you doing? Who curated this list? They need to, I don't know. They need to get with it. Anyways, that is the morning joint. I am filling in with Joey J. Ping, who is gone today. We'll have some more shows for the North American Weed Tour across this week. I'll be putting out a couple episodes of Digital Trapper Institute. I got a couple different guests lined up for the RMR podcast. Let's pull up that schedule real quick. We will be streaming live, and then it'll be on everywhere else afterwards. So tomorrow, Tuesday the 26th, I've got on the RMR podcast, Willamette Valley Alchemy out of Oregon, and then Fugu Farms out of Washington. So 2 Pacific Northwest concentrate brands will be on the RMR podcast tomorrow. Fugu Farms has been absolutely slaughtering it out here in Washington. So I'm excited to check to both of them. And then Willamette Valley Alchemy actually had a perfect score, 10 out of 10 on one of our West Coast Weed Tour reviews a couple years ago. So I'm excited to talk to them. Then we have the Northeast podcast with Jeffrey Hoffman, aka the 420 Jurist, tomorrow as well. And then let's see what other podcasts we have on the docket for the week. Grow and Tell podcast should have Jennifer Michelle of Natura Solve at 2 p.m. on Thursday. And then on Friday, July 29th, I'm running back-to-back episodes of the RMR podcast. I got LeafWorks out of Washington State, or the Edgemont Group. They do the LeafWorks brand. They do concentrates for cookies in Washington. They have the full spec brands. They have a couple different brands out here in Washington. Crazy operation. We went out there, toured their facility a couple years ago. They have a ton of outdoor farms on this hill, on this beautiful hill overlooking this river, and then a massive manufacturing facility a couple miles away. We went and did a video at both facilities. Beautiful, beautiful place. Doing great work here in Washington. And then we have a podcast with Pleasant Trees, out of Michigan at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on July 29th. So we have quite a bit of and I know we have some more showing up this week. We have quite a bit of podcast entertainment on the North American Weed Tour coming out this week. Appreciate everyone chiming in, staying in with us on this morning joint. Newsletter should be in your inbox if you're subscribed. If you're not, go to the website. You can subscribe. Reach out. We'll get you subscribed. Morning joint goes out every Monday, and then we do this podcast afterwards. RMR podcast, Grow and Tell podcast, Digital Trapper Institute, Hire Women, Grow and Tell, Canadian Cannabis podcast, Midwest Cannabis podcast, Step Academy, which is strains, terpenes, extracts, and cannabis products. We have a bunch of different unique shows coming all this week. Appreciate you guys tuning in and staying up with us. Make sure to leave some comments, leave some love,